Now, let's talk about locomotion. So this locomotion simply refers to the movement of an entire organism from one place to another. So only animals are going to carry out locomotion. The day we hear a plant had locomoted from one place to another, that will be quite new. So the other types of organisms, such as trees, can only move their bodies while remaining fixed. So locomotion in animals is done with the help of what we call the skeletons and the muscles. So when you talk about a skeleton, it is any frame structure that gives mechanical support to the body and provides protection to the softer parts of the body. When we talk about the softer parts, we could be talking about things like your heart and your lungs. All these have to be shielded with some regions of our skeleton, which is going to protect them from internal or external damage. Then when we talk about skeletons, we basically have three types of skeletons, which is in multicellular organisms. So we have the hydrostatic skeletons. Apart from the hydrostatic skeletons, we also have the exoskeletons and the endoskeletons. So when we talk about those animals with hydrostatic skeletons, here we talk about the worms, right? And then when we talk about those that have an exoskeleton, we can talk about insects such as the grasshoppers. And when we talk about those ones which have an endoskeletons, the best example that we can give here are the human beings. So let's talk in detail now more about the hydrostatic skeleton. We are saying this is a type of skeleton which is made up of watery fluids, which is found inside the body. So the watery fluid offers mechanical support and helps in movement. The type of skeleton occurs in soft-bodied invertebrates such as the earthworms, the hydra, the snails, the slugs, the sea anemones, and all those other different invertebrates. They are having a hydrostatic skeleton. So water has three important characteristics that makes it suitable to act as a skeleton. This is quite new. Number one, it is a relatively incompressible and it cannot be easily compressed. Number two, it can transmit pressure changes equally in all directions. And then number four, it makes up the shape of the container. That's quite interesting. We are being told that water is a skeleton. Let's move on to what happens during locomotion. So during locomotion, that is in an earthworm, the circular and longitudinal muscles contract in turn to produce a peristaltic wave along the body, beginning at the front end and working backwards or walking backwards. All this is being done. So when we talk about the circular muscles, the longitudinal muscles, the watery fluid, and then the gut, we are dealing with our our earthworm, right? Or that is what is happening in the earthworm. Let's move on to those insects or animals with exoskeletons. So for hydrostatic skeletons, we have invertebrates. And then for an exoskeleton, we have those arthropods, right? When we talk about arthropods, we are talking about the crustaceans, the insects, the myriapods, and the arachnids. In insects, the skeleton is also known as the cuticle, all right? So it is largely made up of a polysaccharide, which is called chitin. This is in an exoskeleton. So this chitin is covered with small amounts of wax outside. So the cuticle is made up of a waxy thin outer layer that we call the epicuticle. And the inner layer of chitin is called the procuticle. The procuticle is made up of two layers, which we call the exocuticle and the endocuticle. This is what makes up the procuticle. So this is our insect joint showing a location of an exoskeleton and muscle. So we have our extensor muscle there, and we have our flexor muscle there, and then we have our epidome there. Then we have the arthrodial joint, which is somewhere here, and then we have the exoskeleton. So when we talk about the extensor muscles, obviously here we are talking about the biceps. When we talk about the flexor muscles, we are talking about the triceps, right? I hope I remember the right one. So here is a simple exercise that you need to do. State the functions of each of the parts labeled in the diagram above. Let's talk about the extensor muscles. Let's talk about the flexor muscles. Let's talk about the apodome. Let's talk about the arthrodile joint, and then the exoskeleton. So you need to do these ones at your own time. Find the answers and send them to me. Then finally, draw the hind leg of a grasshopper, showing the following parts. Number one, the femur, the spine, and the claws. Then you are done with your exercise on the exoskeleton. Let's now talk about the endoskeleton. So this endoskeleton is located inside the body of an organism. It is made up of bones and cartilage. We didn't hear anything related to cartilage in the exoskeleton, did we? But we heard of interesting terms such as the chitin, and also another structure which was the cuticle, the procuticle, and those other interesting features. So we need to know those. So when we talk about endoskeletons, these usually have bones and cartilage. So this type of skeleton is found in vertebrates. So when we talk about vertebrates, we'll be talking about fish, we'll talk about amphibians, we talk about reptiles, birds, and mammals. So the endoskeleton of a vertebrate fetus is largely made up of cartilage, while that of an adult is made up of bones with small amounts of cartilage. So in areas that needs flexibility. So this cartilage is needed in areas where there is need for flexibility. However, some adult vertebrates have an entire skeleton made up of cartilages. For example, we have the cartilaginous fish such as sharks. So all these fish, they don't just need the cartilage to be found on those points that needs to be flexed a little. This one, it's made up of we are having cartilage which is being found in the whole aspect of the organism. So this cartilage is simply a firm and flexible rubber-like tissue which is made up of living cells and collagen fibers. So these collagen fibers and also the living cells are embedded in a matrix which we call the chondrion. So the structure of the cartilage is illustrated in the following diagram. So here is our structure of a cartilage. We know to say this outer structure there is our lacuna, which contains the living cell, and then this blank structure there is the chondrion matrix. So that is our chondrion matrix, and then finally those our structures there are the lacuna. So now let's talk about cartilage a little bit in detail. So when we talk about cartilage that is found in animals, this one is usually firm but flexible in some parts of the vertebral body, such as the trachea, the nose, the earlobes, the larynx, and at the ends of bones. So when we talk about all these parts, the earlobes, the larynx, the nose, and the trachea, this is where we can find some cartilage, and also the larynx. I hope I mentioned that one. So some functions of cartilage is, number one, it is found between the vertebrae in the spine, allowing the bending of the spine. So bending of the spine assisted by cartilage. It is also found in the trachea and allows it to remain open even when the neck bends, right? And then apart from that, it is found in the pinna and at the end of the nose and helps to keep them firm. So what is keeping the pinna, the nose, and all those things to be firm? It is the cartilage. Apart from that, it is also found at the ends of bones, at joints, where it reduces friction and cushions the end of bones and bears loads. All this is being done by what we call cartilage. And last but not the least, it is the main skeletal material for vertebrate embryos. All right, so that is how important cartilage is. Now let's move on to another one, which is basically the bone. So when we talk about the bone,